How did the Nazis beat people in broad daylight, in front of crowds who said nothing? Watch till the end to know why they chose the streets as their stage and how the torture methods they used were unforgettable. Berlin, 17th March, 1943. The morning is cold enough to bite the tips of the fingers. Frost still clings to the tram rails. The streets smell faintly of coal smoke from the early fires lit in apartment stoves. Shopkeepers are unlocking their doors. A milkman tilts his cart around the corner. It should be an ordinary morning. Then a shout, sharp, harsh, the kind of sound that cuts across the everyday noise of horses' hooves and street chatter. Heads turn. People pause mid-step. In the middle of Alexanderplatz, 3 men in long leather coats are shoving a boy forward. He is maybe 16, pale-faced, thin, his boots too large for him. A torn satchel hangs from his shoulder. A few sheets of paper spill from it, carried away by the breeze. The tallest of the 3 grabs a fistful of the boy's hair. The boy stumbles. The man in the leather coat yanks him upright. The second man, broader, with a jaw like a slab of stone, swings a rubber truncheon into the boy's ribs. The sound is not a clean crack. It is a thick, heavy thud. It lands in the stomach of every person watching. A woman at a flower stand freezes, a daffodil slipping from her hand. A tram grinds to a halt. Passengers pressed against the glass, eyes wide. An old man steps out of the bakery with a loaf of rye still in his hands. He does not move closer. He does not walk away. He simply watches. The boy is forced to his knees. The man with the truncheon hisses something in German. It is one word that everyone understands. Verräter, traitor. The word is spat like poison. The boy's lip splits with the next blow. Blood trickles down his chin. He looks up, eyes darting across the circle of onlookers. There is no plea in his gaze, just shock and a quiet, desperate question. Will no one stop this? A uniformed officer arrives, his boots clicking on the wet cobblestones. He carries no weapon. He doesn't need one. His voice is enough. He orders the crowd to keep their distance. The onlookers obey, not out of respect, but out of something colder, fear that burns the throat and freezes the feet. The boy tries to speak. Another strike swallows his words. The truncheon rises again and again, each blow measured, deliberate. The beating is not rushed. It is paced, like a public reading of a death sentence. A mother pulls her daughter behind her. The little girl's eyes peek around her coat, catching the glint of the boy's spilt blood. A man in a cap whispers to the woman beside him, "He must have done something." She does not answer, because they both know the truth in these times. Something can mean anything or nothing at all. The leather coats step back. The boy collapses, his knees scraping the cobblestones. A boot slams into his back, pressing him down. His cheek rests against the cold stone. His breath is shallow. Somewhere in the square, a church bell strikes the quarter hour. The chime is almost drowned out by the sound of spitting, a soldier's boot grinding the boy's satchel into the dirt. Nobody moves forward to help. Not the baker, not the flower seller, not the tram conductor, still staring from his window. They are witnesses. And in Nazi Berlin, witnesses are part of the performance. The 3 men drag the boy to his feet. One takes the truncheon, the other grabs the satchel. The papers inside, pamphlets, notes, scraps, are held up for the crowd to see. The officer announces that these were seditious materials, evidence of treachery. The boy sags between them, legs buckling. The officer orders him to march away. The crowd parts in silence. When they are gone, the square exhales, but no one speaks of what just happened. Not here, not in the open. They will tell their families in whispers that night, behind curtains. With the lamps turned low, and so the message remains, clear, brutal. It does not matter if you are armed or unarmed, guilty or innocent. In this city right now, daylight itself will not protect you. It will expose you. It will hold you still, so they can break you in front of everyone. Berlin was not the only stage. Across occupied Europe, the same play was performed, with different actors, different victims, but the same brutal script. What happened next in Warsaw would prove that the Nazis did not need darkness to hide their cruelty. Daylight was their weapon. Warsaw, Poland, February 1943. The street is not just a road, it is a stage. Cobblestones glisten under a thin veil of frost, the winter air holding its breath. A horse-drawn cart rattles past, its driver slowing, eyes narrowing at the commotion ahead. The air is heavy with the scent of coal smoke and damp wool, the ordinary smell of the city now poisoned by the metallic tang of fear. An SS officer steps into the center of the square, his shadow stretching long in the pale morning sun. The sound of boots striking stone comes in measured rhythm, each impact a declaration of authority. Two men in plain coats are shoved forward, their arms bound behind them with coarse rope that bites into the skin. They stumble once, twice, and each time a rifle butt drives into their backs to keep them moving. Children press close to their mother's skirts, eyes wide but unblinking. Somewhere in the crowd, an old man shifts his weight, his jaw tight, as if bracing against a blow that may never come. The city watches, because watching is safer than speaking. The officer barks orders in clipped, sharp syllables that slice through the still air. A bench is dragged into the square, its legs scraping against the ground, with a sound that makes even the bystanders flinch. One of the men is forced over it, his head hanging low, breath steaming in the cold. A soldier removes his belt slowly, almost ceremonially, and folds it in his hands. The leather cracks as it is pulled taut. The first strike lands with a sound that is both dull and sharp, the body's percussion against the morning quiet. The man exhales through clenched teeth, his back jerking but not breaking. Another blow follows, then another, until the rhythm becomes its form of speech. One everyone understands, but no one dares translate. Across the street, a shopkeeper lowers the blinds halfway, not all the way, just enough to dim the view, not enough to hide the fact that he is still watching. A tram passes, the passengers inside turning their heads, catching only fragments of the scene before it slides away. The city does not stop. It only bends around the violence like a river around a stone. In another quarter of the city, hours later, a young woman is marched across a marketplace for stealing bread. Her hair is yanked loose, falling into her face as she is paraded past the stalls. Traders look down at their hands, suddenly fascinated by the weighing of onions or the folding of cloth. A boy laughs, too loudly and too nervously, and is silenced by a single glance from his father. The punishments are never the same, but the message never changes. It is not about what is done to the body. It is about what is done to the mind. The body heals, or does not, but the memory seeps into the stones, into the walls, into the way people carry themselves when soldiers are near. At dusk, the cobblestones in the square still bear a faint trace of blood, half washed away by melting frost. A stray dog noses at the spot before moving on. Somewhere behind shuttered windows, whispers begin, soft, uncertain, dangerous. Someone claims they knew the man. Someone else says they heard he had been printing leaflets. But no one says it too loudly, and no one repeats it twice. The next morning, life resumes. Bread is bought, trams rattle along their lines, and boots march in the same steady rhythm. The violence is not constant. It does not need to be. Once seen, it lingers in the mind, casting a shadow over every open square and every wide street. And in that shadow, silence grows. But the shadow was not the end. It was the beginning. In Warsaw, as in Berlin, daylight offered no refuge. It was the hour when lessons were taught in public, when cruelty wore a smile, and when every bystander learned that the streets themselves could turn against them. Rotterdam, 1944. These scenes were no longer rare. Paris, Prague, Amsterdam, Krakow. The uniforms might change from black leather to gray wool. The accents of the victims might shift from Polish to Dutch to French. But the method remains the same. Public, deliberate, humiliating. The street becomes a courtroom without a trial. The punishment is not hidden, it is staged. From the shadow of a narrow side street, a teenage girl is dragged into the harsh glare of the market square. Her hair is tangled, her dress wrinkled. She has been delivering bread to her brother, hiding in the dunes outside the city. And someone has betrayed her. 2 German soldiers grip her by the arms. A third marches ahead, clearing a path through the crowd. Her feet drag against the stones, 1 shoe missing. They throw her to the ground in front of the stalls. She lands hard on her hands and knees, scraping skin and leaving pale smears of blood on the pavement. A soldier shouts something she doesn't fully understand, then yanks her upright by her hair. The crowd murmurs but does not move forward. The soldiers mock her, calling her a little rat. One laughs as her skirt rips in the struggle. The sound of the fabric tearing seems louder than the market noise. A man selling apples at the edge of the square drops his sack. The fruit rolls away, scattering between boots. He bends to pick them up, then stops, his eyes fixed on the girl. She is shoved against a wall. The soldiers slap her face, not to knock her down, but to humiliate her in front of every eye watching. A German photographer, wearing civilian clothes but a press badge on his coat, lifts his camera. The flash burns the moment into history. No one moves to block him. The photograph will be printed in a Nazi-controlled newspaper as proof of their power. To the soldiers, the girl's shame is as useful as her punishment. The market continues in a strange half-life. People still buy fish, bargain for bread, but their eyes keep darting back to the corner where the soldiers stand. In Krakow, 2 street musician brothers are playing a slow Polish folk song outside a cafe when a German patrol stops them. The sergeant orders them to play something appropriate. They hesitate. One of the brothers tries to argue, his voice quiet but steady. The sergeant takes the violin from his hands and smashes it against the wall. The neck splinters with a sharp, shrill crack. The guitar is next, shattered in 2 blows. Then the men are beaten with the same deliberate rhythm used on so many others before them. Inside the cafe, customers watch through the glass, coffee cups trembling in their hands. Some turn away, staring into their drinks. Others keep looking, as if memorizing the scene for reasons they do not dare explain. Everywhere, the formula repeats: seize the victim, make the accusation loud enough for all to hear, deliver the punishment slowly so it leaves time for the fear to spread. This is not random cruelty. It is a performance calculated to ensure that no one who sees it will forget or resist. The streets become stages, the victims unwilling actors, the crowd an audience trapped in their seats. When the war finally ends, the boots no longer march through the squares, the truncheons vanish into evidence rooms, and the photographers put their cameras away. The cobblestones are scrubbed clean, the bloodstains fade, and markets resume their trade as if nothing happened. But the silence of the witnesses does not fade. It stays with them, a shadow cast across the years. Some will tell their children decades later, in halting voices, that they once saw a girl dragged through a market. Others will admit they stood by while a man was beaten in front of his shop. Many will say nothing at all, because the shame of surviving by silence is a weight they cannot lift in public. For those who lived through it, daylight never feels entirely safe again. The sight of a uniform on a street corner, the sound of boots striking stone, even the way sunlight falls across an empty square can stir memories they thought were buried. The past walks beside them, invisible but unshakable. History remembers the large battles, the names of generals, and the lines on maps. But these small acts of street terror and these performances of power are just as much a part of the war's truth. They reveal how control was maintained, not only with armies and tanks, but with the calculated breaking of bodies in the places where people bought their bread and drank their coffee. The cruelty was not hidden, it was displayed. And the display worked because it was not just the victim who was targeted. It was everyone watching. The real lesson was not in the blows themselves, but in the silence that followed. Today, the cobblestones in those cities carry no visible scars. Tourists walk across them without knowing what they once witnessed. Children play in the squares, their laughter bouncing off the walls that once echoed with shouts and cries. But for those who saw, the sound of a truncheon striking a body in broad daylight never truly fades. It echoes in dreams, in quiet moments, in the spaces between words. They called it justice. But it was theater written in fear, directed by violence, performed in the open. The streets of Nazi Europe carried not just the weight of boots, but of silence. And that silence let the cruelty live on. If you found this story important, like, share, and subscribe. Tell us in the comments, would you have spoken out or walked past in silence?